welcome to the Life and Journal podcast. My name is Nick.
And my name's not Nick.
Correct. Your name is not Nick.
I'm Ian, I guess.
I'm joined by the person formerly known as Ian.
Yes.
Hey, you know what? Maybe you could just have like a symbol like Prince.
I'm working on
like
it.
Like a dick.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that, or I don't know.
Well, you were thinking about dick?
Well, I was...
Well, guys.
Wow, yeah.
This quickly turned to the side.
I mean, I'm sure dick has popped into my head at some point or another just because because I have one, but I don't...
Through your ear or like through your nose?
Well, you know.
Any orifice work. An orifice is an orifice.
It is indeed, yes.
All right. Now no
I
one
will
listened to this
I
show.
will point out I did not hear anything coming, so.
Oh. Oh, Jesus.
Anyway.
What was the whole point behind the whole symbol thing? Was it just, I don't remember. I mean,
it was
I know
something
he did
to do with his record company, and he was implying that he had no name. He was a slave to the record company. So, you know, the symbol was just
his way of
saying the record company was trying to steal his identity. Steal
really?
His,
I never knew that. That's interesting.
Something to that effect.
It's true because
probably
record companies did often. You know,
yeah, they still do, but
I think
they have less power now than they used to.
Really, I think they have more power now.
No, because people can self-produce and self-release. The record companies are.
Then why?
I mean, don't get me wrong; they're still way bigger than they should be, but they don't have anywhere near the power they had in the 70s and 80s.
I think if you're in a small band and you've been struggling for a couple of years, you're playing bars or whatever, and then you've got a small label comes and approaches you, and then say like Geffen approaches you, which they're going to go with a bigger label,
right?
Because there's more,
and I'm sure that the bigger labels are going to sign or going to offer shittier contracts than they say would have maybe 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah,
but
I think like everyone offers shitty contracts. I'm pretty sure,
probably, but if you think about this, back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, artists got a much bigger chunk of the record sales.
Yeah, obviously
because there were more record sales. And that's what the labels push was record sales.
Yeah.
Now they get nothing out of record sales, so the industry's changed. I just don't think that, you hear stories, Warner Brothers really screwed over Black Sabbath, as a, whatever the record, I can't remember, David Kushner Productions or whatever that signed Kansas.
Yeah.
He didn't really. He signed them for a record deal, but he didn't sign them for their records. He signed them for their publishing rights.
Yes,
and he took
all of
it.
Yes, and that's happened to numerous bands over the years.
So there are those albums that they released in the 70s and 80s. They didn't make shit on.
No, they're making nothing on it. So,
but I don't think they can get away with that now because, like I said, artists. There's a lot more record labels, independent record labels, and artists can self release. So
the funny thing is, like I know. Like MXPX isn't a big band,
right?
Obviously, but they're not a small band either. I mean, they've had hits. They've been on the radio. They've had not chart topping, but they've had multiple albums that have charted. They've got several gold albums, things like that. And Mike Herrera, who is their he's their lead singer. He also writes all their songs.
He's the front man, basically.
Yeah, but he writes all their songs and all that. So he posted a picture, I think it was on Instagram, maybe a month or so back, of the check that he got, his monthly check from Spotify for their streaming rights. And I want to say it was like 17 cents.
It doesn't surprise me.
I mean, it's like, if you think people are getting rich off of streaming music,
no,
you're fucking crazy.
But see, that's the new record deal. That's the new shitty side of the industry. Because, Spotify, Apple Music, all those places are making a fortune off of the artists, and the artists aren't getting shit out of it.
See, but it's really nothing new though, because before, so I didn't really know this until recently. So I was looking into I was trying to see if there were like record clubs and stuff that still existed, or CD clubs or anything like that. And I started to look into the background of BMG because they were one of the big ones. Them and Columbia House were like the big clubs. And what I didn't know until I started researching it is BMG, the reason that them and Columbia House were able to do the whole like 10 CDs for a penny,
right,
is because the way that their rights were set up with the record labels they were able to print their own albums and not pay the artists.
Oh.
So, yeah. So that's why if you go and if you like, I bought a used record within the last week or two, and I don't know, surprise, you know.
Yeah. Right.
But on the back of it, it's got a made by BMG.
Right.
So that's why I didn't really think about it until then. I was like, wow, there's a lot of those out there that I see. That's like, if you scroll through Discogs, it's like, club album and have listed next to it. Right. And yeah, that's exactly it. They're printing their own albums. They're printing their own CDs. And because of the licensing agreement, they're able to, like I said, not pay the artists.
Right.
So yeah, all the stuff that BMG, Columbia House sold, the artists never saw a penny of it.
Huh.
But the funny thing is, Lars and Metallica never sued BMG or Columbia House.
No.
It wasn't until Napster that they decided that they were finally getting screwed, I guess.
Well, don't get me started on that, but you know,
that's a whole topic
it is,
in and of itself.
Because I don't know, I've got mixed emotions about that.
Well, I think everyone does,
because I understand part of his point of view, but I also think he went way overboard on it.
Yeah,
you know. But what do I know?
Yeah. But anyway, that's not what we came here to talk. We didn't come here to talk about...
At least it's music oriented that we got our little side.
Well, we started talking about penises at first, so that's not
well,
skin flute, I guess, but
I guess it depends on how it's played, Nick.
Yeah. But anyway, so in the past we've done a lot of these like top 10 lists. I shouldn't say a lot. We've done several of them. I know we did top albums in the 70s. I know we just earlier this year did the top 10 mob movies. What else did we do? We did movies of the 2000s.
2000s. I think we did music of the 70s and 80s.
Yep. And supper
and 90s.
shows. I think we did 90s also. So this time we're going to move into the 2000s. We're going to do the top 10 albums of the 2000s. And when I say 2000s, I mean the last 20 years.
Right.
I think for much of the 20 teens, music has kind of sucked. But
yeah, it's been...
Well,
I wouldn't say it sucks, but it's like... it. I don't even know how to explain it.
I won't say that music sucked. I will say that going into it, I was like, oh, we can't do just the 2000 to 2009 and then 2010 to 2020 in like separate episodes. I was like, we'll just combine them.
Right.
And then I started like going through my list and I was like, oh yeah, I got to put that album on there. Oh yeah, I got to put that one on there also. Okay, maybe the 2000 teens or 10s really hasn't been that shitty.
To be fair, my list is mostly pre-2010. Mostly.
Mine's pretty mixed. Mm-hmm. I've got several. I would say probably half my list it's probably half and half. Close to it.
I guess I'd have to really break it down, but
so normally what we do in these is, we'll kind of talk about a bunch of different albums, and then we'll make a combined top 10 list. Ian and I have very differing music opinions.
Once you get into newer stuff,
yeah.
Our older stuff we're pretty uniform on, but
not this stuff. So there was no way in hell that we could put a top 10 list. We might agree on. I guarantee we would agree on one album.
Right.
The rest of it would be like a 3-hour argument. So,
which you may not want to listen to. I wouldn't say 3 hours. We'll probably after about an hour and a half to 2 hours of just arguing one album, we'd probably be like, okay, that's enough.
I'll give up. So we're going to do our own lists.
Yes.
And we're going to present them individually.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of go through. I figure we'll go through like some honorable mentions that we have first, and then we'll kind of go through the list. Okay.
Sure.
So my first one that I had like as an honorable mention, it was one that I originally had in my top 10 list, and I actually had pretty high on it because when I first started making my list, I did it off my head. Just off the top of my head, just kind of wrote down some albums, and then I started going through my music app, and I'm like, well, shit, I got to put that on there. Well, shit, I got to put this on there. All right, well, now I got to bump things off of my list. So I started. Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory, which is a fantastic album. It came out in October of 2000. I definitely had I would say the 5, 6, 7 range somewhere on my list originally, but it's an album that really kind of I think redefined what rock was going to be through that first part of the 2000s because it had the rock elements. It had the the faster tempo that brought in some of the pop punk kind of music into it. Also incorporated some rap and hip hop into their music. It was kind of like a hodgepodge, and I think you definitely saw that kind of change, because prior to that it was still kind of the grunge was getting old, the alternative scene was kind of getting old at that time, so I was looking for something new and different, and I think Linkin Park kind of came through and really kind of, like I said, kind of revolutionized what music was going to be through that first kind of time period.
Right.
What was one that you had on there, Ian?
I don't have my honorable mentions in any particular order.
Neither do I. I just have them on there.
So, I mean, we can do a more very recent one, Pearl Jam's Gigaton.
Yeah, Gigaton, I think, is a good album. I think it definitely is more reminiscent to some of the early, not necessarily like 10 and Versus kind of Pearl Jam, but I think it was like,
it's a progression from their 2000s stuff.
Yeah, I think it's definitely better than some of the stuff.
I wouldn't say better, but it's.
I think that I think it's overall a better album than some of the stuff that they've put out in the last 10 to 12 years. And not to say the stuff that they put out before wasn't good, because it had some of those albums have some great songs on it. I think Gigaton overall, I think, has a better.
It's really good.
It is a good album.
Because I just went through and did a Pearl Jam, I don't know what you call it, marathon or whatever.
Yeah.
Where I didn't listen to anything but Pearl Jam for like a week, a little over a week, and yeah, I mean it would be difficult for me to say that Gigaton is better than all those other albums, but I think it has the benefit of being brand new.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why it's on my honorable mention.
I got you.
So.
Another honorable mention I had was is also an album from the early 2000s. It's Indestructible by Rancid. It's probably Rancid's second best album. And by the way, if you don't know me,
which you don't,
well, some people that listen to the show do know.
Oh,
me.
maybe.
But I like a lot of punk and ska and things like that. So that's kind of the lens that I look at music through.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I'm also a big classic rock fan and things like that. But when it comes to newer music, that's kind of the
ska,
it's kind of a lot of punk and ska. So definitely, like when it comes to Rancid's one of those classic, like newer. When I say newer, it's not like a '70s punk band, but they're in that newer wave of punk music, and it's definitely I think it's their best album since And Out Come the Wolves.
Okay.
And it's probably, I think, the last like really great punk. And Rancid's one of those. There was a lot of those punk bands that came out in the mid '90s and really kind of made it big and became kind of popular around the same time. And Rancid's kind of they're the last of them. Everyone else has kind of gone away
or altered their music. Yeah. I like Rancid. I like Out Come the Wolves. I don't think I'm familiar with too much of Indestructible.
Yeah, Indestructible is a fantastic album.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a listen.
What you got there, Chachi?
Well, Joni, I've got 13 by Black Sabbath.
Oh yeah, that's one I did not
2013.
Did not think of.
Obviously, it's the first album that Sabbath made with Ozzy since 1979.
Was it 79?
78. Yeah, 78. They did a reunion album, which was live.
Oh,
they
that's
did
right.
record 2 songs.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
But I mean, they just recorded 2 new songs.
Yeah.
So this was a whole new album. I believe it was produced by Rick Rubin. So it's like it was amazing how well they came together, and just it was like they've been playing for. It's like they never broke up.
Yeah,
in my opinion, it was better than any of their last couple albums together in the 70s.
Yeah, their last couple of albums were definitely very forgettable, I think.
Well, there's good things about them, but there's a lot of bad things about them too. I don't think they knew where they were going. They didn't know what they wanted to be at that point.
Yeah, you could definitely tell there was an end coming.
Yeah, or some kind of big shift, whether was coming, which we now know was Ozzy going and doing his own thing.
Yeah,
but 13 is, if you like hard rock metal and you're a Sabbath fan, or if you're an Ozzy fan, even it's fantastic.
Yeah, which I really enjoyed his album.
Well, we'll get to that too.
Year. Yeah, you got that on there.
Yeah, we'll get to that too.
So the next one I have on my list is another album that I had in my top 10, and I had to bump for things that, even though I love this album and I think it is their best album, it's an iconic album from this band. It's world known. It's got huge popular songs on there. It's Elephant by White Stripes. It came out in April 2003, and it obviously it's an album that everyone knows.
Right. I have it as well, but I did originally have it on my top 10, but I bumped it too.
Yeah.
So,
was there something else you wanted to say about it, or
no? I actually wouldn't consider it to be their best album.
Yeah.
But it is the one that got them, kind of catapulted them into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I had it on the list, because it is going to be considered more iconic. My favorite White Stripes album is Icky Thump. But,
yeah, which is also a great album.
Yeah, I think it's better by far than Elephant, better than any of their other albums. But
Yeah.
up to as White Stripes, I think Jack White's done better even beyond that. But
Which
well, I'll cross that one off because that was on my honorable mention. We don't have to mention that now.
well, you just did.
Well, we both did, yeah. How about Swagger by Flogging Molly? It was their first studio release.
Flogging Molly is one of those bands that I just don't really think of a whole lot.
Right.
And they're a really fantastic.
They're really good. Yeah.
I saw them live in concert last year, and they put on a fucking hell of a show.
Yeah. And Swagger is, like I said, it's their first album. So again, it's kind of, I think most people might.
What year did that come out?
2000.
Oh, okay.
I think a lot of people might go to Float or
Yeah.
Drunken Lullabies is like more iconic for them. But for me, it was when I became aware of them, I went into their music from the beginning.
Yeah.
Just start at the beginning. So Swagger was the first album that I listened to of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's got that. It's the first. It was, and there's a lot of great tracks in there that I think probably still find their way into the live sets and stuff like that. So
yeah, like I said, man, it was a band that I never, before I saw them live. Obviously, I knew who they were and I'd listened to some of their music, but I definitely got. I definitely felt more of a connection to their music after seeing them live, and really, I don't know. I enjoy their music more now than when I did before.
And then the thing is they've got that Irish like punk element to them.
They're very,
but they're different than Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah.
You know, there's a distinction. Whereas sometimes, like with pop bands or punk bands,
I would say they're definitely similar.
Or ska bands, sometimes they're similar, but you know, you listen to them, you're like, well, there's obvious differences, but there's say less differences than there are similarities.
Yeah. Flogging Molly, I feel like, has more like the folk Irish, whereas Dropkick Murphys has more of the punk kind of edge to it.
Harder edge, perhaps. And I guess I don't know how many members of Dropkick Murphys were literally born in Ireland.
None.
Right. So you know they're American Irish, whereas I think at least the lead singer and primary is from Ireland.
Ireland, yeah.
So a little bit more of a connection, but you're right. It is. I would say it's a little bit less. We'll say hard edged.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they definitely have an edge to them. I mean,
but not like Dropkick Murphys.
Not like Dropkick Murphys, obviously.
Dropkick Murphys are more aggressive.
Yeah, and that's why I said they've got Dropkick Murphys has more like the punk edge to them, where Flogging Molly's is more like the folk Irish.
Right. Yeah.
Even though I would never classify Flogging Molly as a folk Irish band.
No,
never.
But just by comparison.
Yes, just because they are similar bands. Right. But yeah, I saw them open for Social Distortion last year. It was just a fantastic show. So one that I've got on my list is, I don't think I had it in my top 10 when I first started making it, but I might have, because it's just a really great album. It's The Ever Passing Moment by MXPX. Mm-hmm. It was kind of, so MXPX has like this 3-album set that they did with A&M. And Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo was a fantastic album. I mean, their album before that, which is Life in General, which I don't think is where I got the name of this podcast from, but I might have.
You probably did.
Unintentionally.
Right.
But, so yeah, Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo was with A&M, and then Ever Passing Moment, and then Before Everything and After. There was those like 3 albums that they did with A&M. And those 3 albums are, I think, the best 3 albums that they've done. And I don't know if it's because of A&M's influence. Obviously, maybe there's more money in production and they're able to have better equipment, better producers and whatnot. And I believe they use the same producer for Ever Passing Moment and Before Everything and After, which Before Everything and After is on my top 10 list. That's why Ever Passing Moment is not. But it's just a fantastic album. I know it's Mandy's. I think it's Mandy's favorite MXPX album, but it's a great album. I remember the day that album came out. It came out in May of 2000, and I remember like I was at work the whole day, and I couldn't wait to get out of work, so I'd drive to Best Buy and go buy the CD. But that's it, man.
All right. I've got Less Than Jake's Anthem from 2003.
That's a fantastic album.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it is because I would say a lot of people who probably were into Less Than Jake in the 90s probably would have stopped by then, would have given up on them. But I think Anthem is one of those albums that was kind of a turning point from what they were to maybe what they became.
Yeah.
Not that there was a huge difference. I mean, you listen to some of their new stuff, it's not that different. But, I don't know, just Anthem seemed like a turning point, even more so than, say, Borders and Boundaries, which I think a lot of people, that was their cutoff. But, that was in 99, I think 98.
So, yeah.
So,
if you're interested, and if you are a fan of Anthem, I believe the Bane of My Existence SRC vinyl is going to reissue that.
Right. Which is unfortunate because I really want that album. So I'm going to try and order it. We'll see what happens.
I would say, order it once it's released.
Right. If it's not out of stock.
Because I haven't had any issue, correct. Yeah. I haven't had any issues like ordering in-stock things from them. It's only when I pre-order stuff. Like pre-order a Blink-182 album in, October of last year, and it's August, and it still hasn't been released.
Nice.
Yeah. I'll have that damn thing on order for almost a year before I get it.
If you get it.
I'll get it eventually. I know that last time I talked to them, they said they were having production issues. So I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I think it's scheduled for like August 28th or something, which I think is also the same time that the colored You Prefer an Astronaut albums are supposed to be released.
Oh,
hello, Mandy.
Hello.
Can you say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone.
She's playing Maid today, apparently.
Thank you for the drink. I appreciate it. Mandy's going to be on the podcast next week, aren't you, Mandy?
I think so.
We'll see you then.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Was there anything else you were?
No, just Anthem. It's like I said, it was kind of a turning point, and I think it was it was the second Less Than Jake CD I purchased.
Oh, really?
Yeah, after Losing Streak. So.
Hello Rockview has always been my favorite.
Yeah, again, a lot of those early Less Than Jake albums, it's kind of tough to find one that's your favorite or not because they're all so really good. But
they are. Even Greased, which is it's the Grease soundtrack
played by Less Than
Jake.
Yeah.
It's just it's fantastic. It's just
But the thing is Hello Rockview came out in 96.
Oh yeah.
So where's the 2000s list? So
yeah, I know, Ian. I'm just saying.
So that's why I went with Anthem
I'm just getting a little sidetracked and wanted to talk about Hello Rockview.
Okay. Perhaps save that for another show.
Maybe.
Or save that for Vinyl Den.
Yeah, very very true. Mm-hmm. Actually, I should talk about my little my 7-inch box set on one of those episodes.
There you go.
Maybe it's a good solo Thursday topic.
Yeah.
So my next album it's a newer one. It's from 2017. It's Is This the Life We Really Want by Roger Waters. So I have never been a fan of David Gilmour or Roger Waters solo stuff. Like some of David Gilmour's, like
I like some of his solo stuff.
Some of the stuff off his like first album or two from the late 70s, early 80s. His
last album was really good.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. It was really good, and then it was I think his last album was a lot better than some of the other stuff he's done. But Roger Waters has had some real shit music.
Right. Well, I think he takes a certain pretentious approach to his stuff.
Well, I think he has gone through everything post Pink Floyd. Any of his solo stuff, I think he's always kind of approached it like he was doing The Wall.
Right.
It was, okay, we're going to do a theme, and here's the story, and...
But he kind of did that with Floyd, though, too.
Well, yeah. Well, it worked with them. It did not work with his solo work. And so when he went into recording Is This the Life We Really Want, I don't remember who the producer was for the album, but he kind of went into it with Roger Waters and was like, look, you need to put all that shit aside and let's just focus on creating good music. And this album, I mean, it's made by a guy who's in his freaking mid-70s,
Right.
is a fantastic fucking album. I would put it, I mean, it's definitely head and shoulders above anything that any solo member of Pink Floyd has done.
Which, really just 3 of them, technically.
Four
2.
of them. All 4 of them have released solo albums.
Well, shows how much those other artists I were
Yeah.
aware of. You know.
Yeah, I know.
I know. I was gonna say 3 because I know Dave Mason has, but
Nick Mason.
Nick Nick Mason.
And Richard Wright has too.
Has he?
Yeah.
Well, not anymore.
Well, no, he's dead now.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus. Sid Barrett hasn't either.
Right. Oh yeah, I forgot about him. He did do a solo album,
Yeah,
didn't he? Or
he
2.
did 2 of them,
Yeah.
or 3 of them.
Yeah. But,
So.
yeah. Nothing recently though.
No, nothing since 1972, Ian.
Right. He needs to get working on that.
Jesus.
Time's a wasting.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Tupac's released 75 albums since he's been dead.
Right. Exactly. Well, in Coltrane.
Yeah,
How many albums has Coltrane released?
John Coltrane's kids are really milking that
Yeah.
milking that thing, you know.
Yeah, beating that dead horse.
I think they actually,
Literally.
I think he just released another album like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, about once a month.
That
there's
seems
a new
like there's a
Coltrane.
new Coltrane.
Yeah,
So I mean, but that's the thing with like the old jazz musicians. I mean, they would record so much session work,
right.
and I mean, I'm sure there's like thousands of unheard Coltrane songs out there. Speaking of older music, I was in Dearborn Music last weekend, and they had the complete works of Robert Johnson on vinyl.
Really,
Yeah, it was like $75.
new or used?
I don't know. It was on the. It might have been used, but it was on the end like closest to where the DVDs are.
I'd have to look at it. Was it the? If it's $75, it wasn't the. I'd have to look and see because there's variant versions of songs. So it'd be like, it could be the entire collection, but then there's another like bunch of albums that are just reworkings of other songs.
No, I think this is the same because I think it's the same one I looked on Discogs a while
Okay.
back, where it was like it had like everything
Right.
on there.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at it if it's still there.
Because I mean, he only recorded like 40 songs or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But there's like 2 versions or 3 versions of every song.
Well, that's what I mean. You
Yeah.
know. But I definitely want to check that out then.
Yeah, well, I meant to
I don't know
text.
if
I meant to take a picture of it and send it to you, but
Yeah, I got. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but
it's probably gone by now. But
it might be. My next one is "Employment" by the Kaiser Chiefs.
I've never listened to that album.
That's their first album.
Like I've
Well,
heard,
the
I've heard
first
the
album
Kaiser
is
Chiefs,
Kaiser
but I've
Chiefs.
never listened to their music.
That album is really good.
Is it?
They've kind of taken a bit more of a pop turn
Yeah,
in recent albums that I'm not sure I enjoy,
yeah,
but that album is really good.
yeah.
Because it's more pop punk, indie,
Mm-hmm.
maybe with a little element of new wave in there.
Yeah.
And their pop stuff has got a lot of new wave in it, but almost too much, and none of the other stuff. It's
Gotcha.
kind of, I don't know. I'm still working around some of their newer stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
that album, Employment, is really good.
I'll check it out.
It's 2005 when that came out.
Okay.
So
My next one on the list was it's another fantastic album. It's another Linkin Park album. It's One More Light, which was released in May of 2017. So this was like what, a year or less than a year before Chester killed him. Did he kill himself in 2017 or 2018? I don't remember. It might have been 2000.
I think it's 18.
It might have been
Because
2018.
it was after Chris Cornell.
Yeah. So it's a really good album. It's one of their better albums. It's probably their third. I'd say their third best album, behind Hybrid Theory and Meteor, which is their first 2 albums. But yeah, One More Light. It's like I said, it's a great album. And once you kind of go back and listen to the album, you kind of hear like that there was something going on.
Yeah.
You know. But I don't know. It's a great album though. Definitely one worth checking out.
This one, my next one, it was on my top 10, but it fell off.
Actually, it's one that I had next on my list. I was going to talk about.
Oh, we can get that out of the way then.
Yeah.
Greta Van Fleet's "Anthem of a Peaceful Army"
Absolutely.
from 2019. It's a great album. I mean, we've talked about it on the show a bunch of times. I don't know if there's much more to say, but it's a really good album.
I think it's an album that I think a lot of people knock Greta Van Fleet for the whole they sound too much like Led Zeppelin thing. Which I think is bullshit.
Yeah,
now, are there songs where they sound similar? Absolutely. Sure. But there's other songs on that album that are nowhere even close. I would say the double EP that was released prior to Anthem of the Peaceful Army has more of a Led Zeppelin feel than Anthem does.
It's hard to say. I get the influence. The influence is there.
Absolutely.
But, it would be like saying Led Zeppelin sounds too much like Muddy Waters.
But here's the thing: when Led Zeppelin was becoming popular in the late '60s, that was the knock on Led Zeppelin was they sounded like other artists, and they were ripping off other artists' music and ripping off from blues artists and things like that. So I mean, it's like, look, I don't care if you're a band that's trying to sound like Green Day, for instance. I don't give a shit. As long as you're making good music, I don't fucking care.
Right, I'm the same way.
You're not doing covers. You're not redoing other people's music, even though they did. It wasn't on that album. It was on their double EP where they redid. God, for the life of me, I can't remember. But it was like an old blues song. It was just a fantastic cover of it. But if you're a band sounding like another band, I don't care, because you know what? It's 2020. There's no new music out there. Everyone's kind of redoing.
That we know of, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying, though, is everyone's kind of doing the same thing that other people are doing, but they're trying to do it a little differently.
Right.
And I think Greta Van Fleet that's what they were doing. They're like, look, we're going to do this like classic rock kind of feel. If you see their live shows, it definitely has a 1975 rock vibe to it.
To be honest, it's fresh because it hasn't been done in a while.
No, and they're doing it great. They're doing a kick-ass job doing it.
It doesn't matter. Like, I'm with you. If a good song is a good song, a good record is a good record.
Yeah.
If it sounds too much like something else, that's that is what it is. But unless they're literally ripping off other artists and not acknowledging that that's an influence or something, that's a different story. But that's not happening very often. That's definitely not happening here.
No.
They're just a really good rock band.
Yeah.
So, that's on my. It was kind of on my top 10, but I had to bump it.
Yeah, it was one I had on my top 10 also. I had to move it. So my next one, it's Generation RX by Good Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Fantastic album. Good Charlotte's one of those bands that I had never really heard of when they were kind of like coming up. And then Mandy and I saw MXPX in Detroit in 2000, I want to say. Uh-huh. And Good Charlotte opened for MXPX. That goes to show how small Good Charlotte was at the time. And they like blew me away during the show. And I remember like the next day, Mandy ran out to Meyer or wherever it was to try to find their CDs. I mean, it was so it was kind of cool that we got to listen to them and we got into Good Charlotte before they were like this huge band in the early 2000s. Mm. And but after their first couple of albums, they definitely fell off. Right. And their next couple of albums were not that great.
Yeah.
And then Cardiology, which came out in like the mid to late 2000s, like 2008, 9, 10, somewhere around there. I might be off on the year, but it's definitely in the 2000s. That was kind of it was a better album than what they'd done before, but it still wasn't fantastic. But Generation RX was definitely up there with their first couple of albums as far as like quality goes. I don't think I have that up on my wall.
You did last.
I did. I had it up on my wall a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, it's definitely like a dark kind of alternative rock album for sure.
Right. So, my next one is Kid A by Radiohead from 2000.
Definitely, I think that's really an underrated album. Though.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it's some might argue that In Rainbows might be better, but obviously OK Computer would be better. But that was in the 90s.
Yeah. I think it's definitely.
But I think
their second best album.
Yeah, and going into the 2000s, they've got their other albums are great. In Rainbows is great, and King of Limbs is great, but Kid A just stands out.
I think it does
because it's kind of different too.
It is.
I think it's more the transitioning for them into something different with what they've been say in the last 20 years. Rather than what they were before.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really like and appreciate about a band like Radiohead is they have attempted to progress and try to do different things on each subsequent album. And you know what?
Sometimes it works.
Sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does. And Kid A is definitely an example of when it definitely works. Yeah,
absolutely. So,
my next one is one that I actually do have on my wall, Ian. It's from 2010. It's from December 2010. It's Arthur's Watch the Years Crawl By. So Arthur is a side project of MXPX, and it was kind of created in the I think their first album was their first album. Well, I guess it wasn't an album; it was an EP, but it was released in like the late '90s, '99, 2000, somewhere around there. And Arthur was created as a side project just to kind of get away from a little bit more of the punk stuff and kind of go towards the rock and some a little slower music and things like that. And then there was like this 10-year gap where they didn't release anything as the side project. And then that album was released, and really they never really said. I don't even think I knew about it until like a year or two after it came out. And it's a fantastic album. It's one of the first albums I was really looking for when I started getting back into vinyl. And I didn't even know it was on vinyl until I got on MXPX's website and was like, holy shit. It was like $15 on their website or whatever. So it's like I said, it's a great album if you're into like that rock and that like early 2000s pop punk kind of feel. Definitely an album that's worth checking out.
Sure. My next honorable mention. We have a lot of honorable mentions.
Yes, we do. The next one, a couple ones I'll try to breeze through since we're like...
This one I'll go fast.
Since we're like 36 minutes on the show now.
Yusuf Cat Stevens. Cat Stevens to those from the 70s. Yusuf as he is now.
Yeah.
His album that came out in 2014, Tell Him I'm Gone.
Yeah.
I just recently got it on vinyl, and because I really never listened to it before that. But I've listened to it like, I think 5 times already since I've had it. I've had it like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks maybe. It's so good. It was it's produced by Rick Rubin again. That's another name that comes up a lot when it comes to
Rick Rubin's done a lot of work, a lot of production work. Not Counting Crows, but Black Crows and all that stuff too.
Ozzy, Sabbath.
Actually, he was the one that he helped when he was producing the Black Crows' first album. It was, I don't remember what the name was, but it was he suggested changing the name to something very racist. I don't remember exactly what it was though. But I think the band was like, no, I think we're just going to stick with Black Crows.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But anyway.
Or at least I don't know if it was meant to be racist, but it sounded racist.
Right, okay. But Tell Him I'm Gone, it's kind of a different album for Cat Stevens. It's very kind of bluesy.
Yeah.
Well, for him, because he's more of a folk artist. But there's a lot of overlap with folk and blues anyway. There's a couple covers on there from some, rock blues artists. But it's a very kind of raw album, which, again, for Cat Stevens is kind of different. So
absolutely,
it stands out. If I even though he's not Cat Stevens technically anymore, he's Yusuf. Or he goes by Yusuf Cat Stevens, whatever. As far as his catalog, it's all Cat Stevens to me, and I'd say this is probably out of all of his records, this is probably like my third or
really.
fourth.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't heard it.
Yeah, it's really really good. So.
I'll lump my last 2 like honorable mentions together, just because they're both. I
could probably do that too.
They're both albums that. So when I went into this, when we started making our lists, kind of like the one rule that we were looking at was, let's not have multiple albums from the same artist in the top 10. If we were able to put multiple artists in our top 10, both of these albums would be in my top 5 because they're both fantastic albums. And one is Warning by Green Day, and the other is 9 by Blink-182.
I think Warning was 99. Oh, no, you're right. It was
October of 2000.
Yep, you're right. Sorry.
God,
I should know that I'm the one who went and bought your copy for you.
You did, absolutely.
Because I had the day off.
Yeah, we were living in the apartment at the time.
Yep.
But, so those are both fantastic albums. 9, I think, is more of a like recall to some of those like earlier Blink albums. Like their Untitled album is probably the closest in the Blink catalog, and which their Untitled album is definitely on my top 10 list. But and as far as like Warning, I think Warning is definitely one of Green Day's best albums, and it was definitely a change from what they had done from before.
It was a transition album.
It was absolutely a transition album, but it was still a great freaking album.
Yeah,
it's one that I wasn't a big fan of for a long time.
It's my second favorite of theirs.
Yeah, so I've definitely come around more to it over the last year.
And up until the one that's on our list, it was my favorite.
Yeah,
for the long time. In fact, I'm surprised I was just one that got overlooked for my.
Yeah, I thought the one that's on my list I think is the obvious choice.
The obvious choice, exactly. Mine too, because I think that's the only one we're going to agree on, that at least in the top 10 in general. But yeah, Warning, definitely, because Green Day is, to me, what I guess Blink is to you, as far as, I'm not as much into Blink as you are, but Green Day I'm very much into.
Yeah, they got a lot of great music, and definitely Warning was definitely one of their
better albums. Absolutely. I'll just do my last two. They're very different albums, but they're Kula Shaker's Pilgrim's Progress came out in 2010.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the album. There's nothing really overly special about it. It is slightly different from their earlier stuff, because they did break up for a while. And they came back and they did an album called Strange Folk, and then which is mostly just songs that they had written before they broke up, but then recorded when they got back together. And then Pilgrim's Progress was, a straightforward, like, let's work on our next album. So it was all music written for that. And it's very different from some of their other stuff, very mild and light. And then Spock's Beard's Oblivion Particle, which came out in 2015. After Neil Morse left, basically, he created Spock's Beard, but he left and said, you guys do
carry on.
You guys do what you want. It's yours. And they did for several years, as they were. But eventually, the guy who took over singing was also the drummer. He left and did his own thing. He actually went and became a member of the house band for Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, okay.
And he did some session work with Tears for Fears and a bunch of other bands. But anyway, the Cirque du Soleil thing was kind of a gig. I think it was the Las Vegas gig.
Okay.
So it was a regular job.
Yeah.
So that's why he left. But he was also the lead singer after Neil Morse left. So they brought in Ted Leonard from another band called Enchant. This was the second album with him. And the reason I picked this one over the first album was because for some reason, I think they were finally kind of finding their way once they brought him in.
It takes time.
But the first album that he plays on, Neil Morse wrote a couple songs. So it's like I don't want to pick that one because I want to say that it's them finding their way without Neil Morse. Yeah. So Oblivion Particle is them finding the
voice,
a bit more of their sound. That's different from what it was when Neil Morse was there, but also kind of more unique from what they were in between. Because they didn't really know what they wanted to be. As far as
I get it.
Progressive rock band or rock band or whatever. So those are my last two honorable mentions.
All right. Well, you want to jump into your list, man? Give
Sure.
your number 10 there?
My number 10 is Blunderbuss by Jack White from 2012. It's his first solo album.
It's a great album.
Yeah, it's a fantastic album. I don't know what I could say about it. It's his first solo album. It's unique. It's different from the White Stripes stuff, but it's still got his signature guitar playing and lyrics, and it's I don't know. I love that album. I can listen to it every day. It's one of those kind of albums.
My number 10 is "Sing Loud, Sing Proud" by Dropkick Murphys, released in February 2001. It's the band's third album. They had gone through kind of a pretty big lineup change prior to this album, and it was definitely like definitely a change from the first couple of albums. It was a progression, and it just has an overall different sound. Even though I do love the first couple of albums, I think it's got some like notable like Irish folk songs that they redid. Rocky Road to Dublin and Wild Rover, both fantastic songs. They're kind of staples in their live sets also that they still do today. Right. But For Boston is the opening track of the album. And that's notable because that is actually Boston College's fight song.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's cool. For Boston's a great song. Rocky Road to Dublin, Heroes from Our Past, Forever, The New American Way. Those are all like great songs off that album.
Yeah. It is a good album. My number 9 is Ordinary Man by Ozzy, 2020.
Which
We did mention
We did mention earlier, yeah.
It could arguably be his best album, his best solo album. I'm not sure if it would be my personal favorite, but I think if I was being objective about it, it's probably close to being his best album ever.
I'll say that I didn't have high expectations for the album.
After 13 from Sabbath, I thought, maybe. Because I would say that his last solo album before this one, which was Scream, was not a great... It wasn't a great album. It was a good album, but it wasn't a great album. Some would argue that Black Rain was his worst album. I totally disagree with that. I think that was probably closer to some of his older stuff than, say... Down to Earth or Osmosis, but Ordinary Man is just—it's
a great album.
It's a great album. I don't know, all of his health issues and everything else. There's something personal about it. It's got everything you want, and Elton John's on the fucking album. It's such a weird combination. But
I'm so glad that Post Malone introduced the world to Ozzy Osbourne.
I know, because we wouldn't have Ordinary Man if he didn't. So. But anywho, Ordinary Man by Ozzy is my number 9 for the 2000s.
My number 9 is The Young and the Hopeless by Good Charlotte. It's their second album. It was released in October of 2002. It really kind of like builds on the success of their first album. And it was really The Young and the Hopeless that really like catapulted Good Charlotte into the like mainstream stratosphere. Yep. I mean, they were one of the biggest bands in the world there for a year or two. And it's funny though because the album got pretty mixed reviews, and critics were not a big fan of this album. And
what do they know?
I know that. And they said that a lot of the lyrics were cliched and things like that. But despite all that, I mean, the album went triple platinum. So I mean, it definitely sold pretty well, especially in 2002. That's
kind of near the end of that. If anything, rock being accepted.
Well, but I was saying like Napster and all that stuff.
Oh,
triple platinum album at that time, is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
The album had several big crossover hits and things like that. But Lifestyle is Rich and Famous, The Anthem, Girls and Boys, they're all fantastic songs off that album.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My number 8 is Dirty Diamonds by Alice Cooper from 2006.
That's an album that I don't think I've ever really listened to.
In my opinion, it's the best album he's made, hands down, since the original Alice Cooper band.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's more in tune with, it's lyrically what Alice is anyway, solo, whatever. But musically, it's kind of more in tune with that early Alice sound.
Yeah.
It's just, every song on that album is awesome. And don't get me wrong, when I say that, I'm not shitting on the other albums in any way. It's just, to me, when I first heard it, I'm like, wow, this album could have been released in 1974.
Yeah.
This could have been the follow-up to Muscle of Love.
I'll check it out.
So yeah, it's, I would say if you haven't, check that out for sure.
My number 8 is, did I have it? I had it on my wall. It's not up there right now, but it's The Knife by Goldfinger. So Goldfinger's like they're a 90s ska punk band, right? Mm-hmm. And so The Knife, it was released in July of 2017. It's actually the 7th studio album from Goldfinger. And it was their first album after a 9-year hiatus. I mean, what they'd done earlier, the band basically broke up. Mm-hmm. And Goldfinger reformed as a supergroup. So you had obviously John Feldman, who's been their lead singer and guitarist, and is now a world-renowned producer. Also, actually, he produced the last 2 Blink-182 albums. But anyway, so it's John Feldman on guitar and lead singing. You got Philip Sneed, which is he's from the Story of the Year. I think that's he's the guitarist from Story of the Year, which is a band I've never listened to, but I've heard of him before. Yeah, it's Mike Herrera from MXPX on bass, and then Travis Barker from the drummer from Blink-182. So he forms this like super group. And the funny thing is, like, The Knife was supposed to come out in 2012. It didn't come out until 2017, and it had the band at that time was not the super group. It was actually I don't remember who was in with them at that time, but they recorded a track called "Am I Deaf" and was released in May of 2013. And the new group re-recorded that song for the Knife. But it's if you're a fan of ska, it's definitely a fun album. It's a great album. I think it's definitely the best work that Goldfinger has done in any form. It's just a great album.
I'll have to check it out because I'm not familiar with it. So, what are we at? Number 7?
Number 7.
My number 7 is Scarlet's Walk by Tori Amos from 2002. With her, after she signed with Atlantic Records, I believe in 86, 87, with a band. The band was called Why Can't Tori Read? The album they did an album, self-titled. It did not do very well. She was still obligated to do, I think, 5 more albums with them. It was like it was a huge record deal.
Yeah.
So what she did was she basically did a solo piano album, which was Little Earthquakes. It came out, was huge. She won a Grammy for it and everything. Mm-hmm. Well, by time 2002 came around, she had basically done all the albums she needed to with Atlantic and was very eager to get out from under that contract. So Scarlet's Walk was the first album she did with Epic Records. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it was, I guess, no longer a period of time in between her recording process. She's usually pretty good about putting out an album every 2 years or so. But for some reason, it was like this was like the Little Earthquakes of their next era.
Yeah. Very
different, but also just kind of personal. A lot of the critics called it pretentious. I don't see what the fuck they're talking about. It was less pretentious than some of our earlier stuff, but
what the fuck do they know?
Yeah, exactly. But huge. It was hugely popular, and it's a great album. It's my favorite Tori Amos album.
Yeah.
I don't think I've listened to any of her albums more than I've listened to that one. I don't think I've listened to any. If you were to combine all the times I've listened to all her other albums, because I put this on at work, and it was basically in the player for like 5 months. And we
That's hilarious.
Every day, from like 2002 on. So. Scarlet's Walk by Tori Amos. It's really good. I wouldn't call it a concept album, but there are themes, overlapping themes to the songs. And this was all written post 2001, 9/11.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of soul searching in terms of what America is or should be relative to that.
Makes sense.
So
probably a very common theme.
In those early albums, a lot of times, and she's a very introspective or contemplative songwriter anyway. But it's strictly about America, and kind of Scarlet's Walk that's where the concept comes in. I guess Scarlet's Walk is their journey across America.
Yeah. That's your number 7.
That was my number 7. Yep.
The funny thing is, Ian, about number 7 is number 7 on my list is also a female artist, and it's the only female artist on my list.
Mine too.
That was not done intentionally.
No, it wasn't.
So my number 7 is a band that I recently came across, and they've been around for a long time. Since 2007, the band's been around. Mm-hmm. It's Death in Venice Beach by the Bomb Pops. Mm-hmm. And it's another one that I had on my shelf that is no longer up there.
Yeah.
But this album was just released. It was March of this year is released. It's their second album. Like I said, the band formed in 2007. They didn't release their first album until Fear of Missing Out came out in 2017, which is also a fantastic album. And then I really enjoyed it. And then Death in Venice Beach it's definitely like a throwback to a lot of those like
90s
punk albums. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that aren't fans of the Bomb Pops because they think they're too commercial and they're too...
You get that with a lot of bands.
It's overproduced. But I'm like, look, I was talking to somebody not too long ago about it. And I'm like, look at And Out Come the Wolves. You mean to tell me that Time Bomb isn't like a popular...
And I love that song.
And that's a fantastic song. Yeah. I don't give a shit. And Rancid by no means is like a pop punk band.
No.
And I think the Bomb Pops, because they're both their lead singers are female, I think they
get a little shit.
Get shit for that. Yeah. But it's I think I mean, like I said, it's an incredible album. It's a great album from beginning to end. I think the whole COVID pandemic has definitely hurt it because it came out at the beginning of, like I said, it was March.
Yeah.
And late March and early April, they were supposed to have like a whole series of record release parties.
Oh, okay.
And I was going to go to the one here in Michigan, and of course everything
shut down.
Everything with the shutdown, everything got canceled. But it's interesting. Like the Death in Venice Beach. It's obviously, I don't know if you know the book, but Death in Venice is a book by Thomas Mann, and it's actually one of the lead singers. That's her favorite book. So it's kind of the Death in Venice Beach is definitely it's
an homage to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like I said, it's a great album beginning and end. Dearly Departed, Double Arrows Down, Notre Dame, Sad to Me, 13 Stories Down, House on Fire. Those are all just like great, incredible songs off that album. Mm-hmm. Definitely check that out. If you're a punk fan, pop punk fan, it's one that you should check out for sure.
You've mentioned them so many times. Sorry, I hit the mic. And I keep saying I need to listen to this, and I keep forgetting to. But it's definitely one I have to check out.
So what you got for number 6, man?
Number 6 is The Crane Wife by the Decemberists.
Never heard of it.
You've heard of the Decemberists.
I've heard the band, but I've never heard the album.
The Crane Wife came out.
I shouldn't say I've never heard of it. I have never heard the album.
Right. Came out in 2006. It was a hit for them. It was kind of like their big hit. I think I want to say some of their releases that come after that have actually sold better and maybe been arguably better well received. But I don't know. Crane Wife was the first album I heard of theirs. They have a very unique musical style, not just in sound, but also in what drives their songwriting. Mm-hmm. In terms of, there's a certain level of theatricality to the songs, but also, for some reason, I don't know if this is intentional or what, but they like to hit like historical, almost period piece type songs.
Yeah.
So even though the music is modern, the songs are about a lot of historical things or period type settings. And I don't know, the Crane Wife, they say it's a concept album. I'm not really sure what the concept is above and beyond the Crane Wife.
Yeah.
But
I feel like there's a lot of concept albums like that.
Yeah. But it's an album that, is just awesome. Like I said, it was the first album of theirs I ever listened to. If I come across an artist and I listen to an album, whatever album it is, whether it's their first album or whatever, this wasn't their first album, but if it's the first album I listened to, if I go further and listen to other stuff, that album's got to be pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm pretty picky. So
no, not you.
You're right. So that being said, the Crane Wife got me into the Decemberists, and it's an album I go back to. It was one of the first albums, vinyl records I bought when I started collecting.
Yeah,
I think it was maybe even the second or third I ever bought. Getting back into it. So, yeah, Crane Wife, 2006. Check it out.
So my number 6 is it's another side project, and it's When Your Heart Stops Beating by Plus 44. So Plus 44, it's a side project of Blink-182. It was the album was released in November 2006. So this is Plus 44 was formed by Mark Hoppus and Travis Barker, so the bassist and drummer from Blink, and this was put together after Tom had kind of left the band to kind of focus on Angels and Airwaves. And it's another gem that's produced by, Jerry Finn is all over a lot of that like pop punk music from the early 2000s. He produced this album. It's a fantastic album, but I think it's a departure from some of that like poppier kind of like sophomore humor kind of stuff that was really kind of throughout a lot of the early like Blink albums. The Plus 44 album is something completely different,
right?
And it definitely has like darker tones to the album while still being a very like upbeat kind of album, and it's something that I wish. So after Blink released, so Tom rejoins the band. They released Neighborhoods, and then after Tom left the band or fired, whatever happened, I kind of originally was hoping that they would kind of revisit Plus 44. This album is. I would put it up there. If you're a fan of Blink-182, it's an album you should definitely check out. I put this album up there with some of the best Blink-182 albums. That's that good. it's oh, it just I don't know. It's just very different, but it's not. It's kind of hard to explain. But
kind of like Foxborough Hot Tubs is to Green Day.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
you know it's Green Day, but it's not quite Green Day.
Yes, exactly. So. But definitely some of the better work. I think that it's some of the best work that I think Mark Hoppus has done by himself.
Okay. Where are we at? Number 5?
Number 5. We're in the top 5.
Awesome. Hard Candy by Counting Crows from 2002. It's obviously not my number 1 Counting Crows album.
Yeah.
That would probably be Recovering the Satellites.
Mine too.
But
which is up on my
on
wall.
Your wall, yeah. However, it is. We've kind of mentioned a lot of transitional albums, and I think Hard Candy is one of those transitional albums of what Counting Crows was before it and what it would be after it.
Yeah.
More so even than This Desert Life, which I think is probably more in tune with what August and everything after. However, Hard Candy is a great album. Every song on it is good. And it is a transitional album because there are things going on in that album that are very different from what they did before. And they really, some of it they haven't done since. So it's almost unique even within their catalog. So I don't know. It's as far as their 2000s efforts, which isn't much. It's only 3 albums, 4 albums if you count the cover album. It's definitely their best.
Yeah.
So
my number 5 is another side project. Well, I guess it's not really a side project anymore, and it's an album that I had on my turntable when you walked down here. Yeah. It's I Empire by Angels and Airwaves, and it's
real quick. I just got to ask, out of your top 10. How many connections to Blink-182 are there?
This last one.
Okay. Because you said no doubles. I have 0 doubles, even in my...
I have 0 doubles also.
I think the most I have is just the fact that Jack White is in 3 of the albums that I've picked. But other than that, everything else is completely individual. And
so is mine.
Yeah, but you've got Blink-182 running through everything.
No, I don't. I've got... I've got one album by Blink-182. I've got one album by Angels and Airwaves and one album by Plus 44. That's it. They're separate bands.
Goldfinger has Blink-182 members in it.
Well, it's Travis Barker, but he's not in the band anymore. It was just that one album.
Okay, all right. Well, go ahead. I didn't mean to jump on it's just like when is there going to be something that doesn't have something to do with Blink-182 in there?
But they're separate bands. It's not the.
I know,
Angels and Airwaves isn't even a side project. It's its own separate band.
I get it. Your pen's leaking all over my hands.
No, actually, that's what gel pens do.
Oh, okay.
You can't if you write on paper with gel pens, you can't touch it because it smears all over.
Oh, well, I can see that now. But anyway, go continue with your music.
So, I Empire, and it's funny because Angels and Airwaves was not a band I really got into at all. Really, when their first album came out, I listened to it. I think I had it on CD.
Yeah, I remember when you bought it.
And it's a good album. It didn't really blow me away or anything, but right. I Empire, like I said, was released in November 2007. It's their second album, and it's like
way better.
I was blown away by this album. It's like I said, it's definitely up there with. I would put this and Plus 44 up there with any of the Blink-182 albums. Surprisingly, I think the album got really kind of mixed reviews, and I think a lot of people just have issues, critic-wise, have a lot of issues with some of Tom DeLonge's antics and some of the things he does, but
his personal ideas.
Yes, and the whole aliens and all that kind of thing. So, and plus I think it's their first album was critically acclaimed, and I think this album is definitely a departure from that. So I think as critics were maybe looking more so of, their first album and they got something different, and I think that's and this album is really different from anything that Tom has done before or after. Mm-hmm. But it's just a fantastic album. Call to Arms, Breathe, Sirens, Secret Crowds, Lifeline, Heaven. Those are all great tracks off the album.
Okay.
Well, that's all I get. No more connections to Blink-182. Well, I got one Blink-182 album coming.
Okay. My number 4, is that we're at 4?
Yeah.
Number 4, Songs for Silverman by Ben Folds. Solo album from 2005. This is another situation where it was like the first album. Like, I was familiar with Ben Folds 5 in the 90s.
Yeah.
And they were okay. I never really I knew a couple of the radio hits. I was like, oh, they're all right. I never really listened to them that much.
Yeah.
So even with that in mind, going into Songs for Silverman, it was like, I guess I should check this out, So I listened to that one. I don't know why I picked that one. That was the one I picked. And I was blown away by it. Obviously his other Rock in the Suburbs and all that, huge album. But Song for Silverman was the one that got me. It was my first introduction truly into the Ben Folds / Ben Folds 5 universe.
Yeah.
And as a result, I would say Ben Folds as an artist is in my top 10 favorite artists, which says a lot, considering I don't listen to a lot of shit, but I listen to enough. Where that's a huge honor. So, now my number 4 is Songs for Silverman. There isn't a bad song on the album.
Yeah.
I argue that I think it's better than Rock in the Suburbs. I know I'm in the minority on that one, but I think it's better than Rock in the Suburbs.
Sounds good. All right, so my number 4 is it's an album that I already kind of briefly mentioned earlier. It's Before Everything and After by MXPX. It's by far, I think, my favorite MXPX album. It came out in September of 2003. It's the band's 6th studio album. Like I said, it's their third and final album with A&M. Like I said, there's definitely a different kind of quality to those 3 albums that I think they're really kind of missing in their other albums. I'm not saying that their other albums aren't good, because they're definitely great albums, but in my opinion, I think this is Blink-182's best album. It's got a great mix of that pop punk kind of sound that was popular at that time, and while still kind of keeping some of that faster paced kind of punk edge at times also. And I think what the decline and demise of A&M around that time, I think really this album really suffered commercially because of it, because there wasn't that push, there wasn't a campaign behind it, even though it's Blink-182's highest charting album. I think it reached 50 or 51 on the charts, which isn't.
You mean MXPX?
What did I say?
Blink-182.
Oh, because you got we talking about Blink earlier. MXPX's highest charting album. It like I said, 50 or 51 it reached on the Billboard charts, and it's something that I think if it would have had a proper campaign behind it, I think could have reached a lot higher. It definitely had some commercial hits, not big hits off of it, but there was definitely some commercial radio play that they got off of the album. But like I said, just fantastic album.
Okay. So we're at what, number 3?
Number 3.
I've got The Raconteurs, Help Me Stranger from 2019. I've been on the record on this podcast saying it's probably the best album of 2019, in my opinion. It was the best rock album of 2019 at the very least. And obviously,
I would say it's number 2, but
it's my favorite of 2019.
I think 9 is probably for me is the best album. Then
I wasn't asking you. I was telling you what my favorite is.
I was throwing my opinion in. It's all right. That's what we do on the podcast here.
Yeah. But it falls in number 3 for my 2000s for the 20-year period, which is still pretty high, relatively speaking.
Yeah, it's a great album.
Yeah,
it's
I
one
love
that
it. I love it.
I bought it, I think around the time it first came out, but I hadn't listened to it until just recently. But yeah, it's a great album.
Yeah,
I was definitely impressed.
I listened to it on Spotify first, and I think that same week I went and picked it up.
Yeah.
So, and I've listened to it a dozen times already since I've owned it on vinyl. But yeah, it's such a good album. I don't have the words to describe what I think of that album, just because it's so good. So
my number 3, it's an album from October 2006. It's the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. It's the band's third studio album at least, and it's an album that does not have a bad track on it. And of course, that's a lot of these in my top 10 I can say the same for, but it's just I think what really stood out for me is My Chemical Romance. The first couple of albums were good, and the stuff that they've released since the Black Parade was good. I mean, they're okay albums, and the Black Parade was something almost completely different. It just, I think, head and shoulders better. And I know Gerald Way, who's the band's lead singer, has credited Queen and Pink Floyd as heavy influences for the album, and it's a concept album. and it's the concept kind of centers around a patient that's dying of cancer, his death, and then his like reflections back on his life after he dies. It's just a great album, fantastic.
So it's
album.
their version of Passion Play.
Kind of.
Okay.
Well, in Passion Play, he's not dying. They're not dying of cancer.
No, he is dead.
Yeah.
Whoever he is, not very clear, but anyway. So
what you got for number 2, man?
Oh, number 2. My number 2 is probably your number 1. American Idiot by Green Day.
No, it's actually my number 2. Also.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Wow, there's our agreement.
There's our agreement because I was going back and forth on 1 and 2. So I guess we can both talk about it.
It is the best Green Day album probably ever.
Yeah,
and that's saying a lot because, Nimrod, Dookie, I mean, those are great fucking albums. Mm-hmm. But American Idiot is just phenomenal.
Which is up on my wall.
Yes, it is.
And it's actually on my shirt.
Yes, it is.
I'm wearing my American Idiot shirt.
I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's a concept album. It's a Broadway musical. It's a punk album. It's a rock album. It's everything you could want in a fucking album.
It's so it was originally released in September of 2004.
Yep.
It's and I think it's like one of the last kind of rock concept albums. Mm-hmm. I think the Black Parade,
or even rock opera. You can almost consider it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Which
that's where the musical part comes in.
Yeah, it's kind of it was definitely 1 or 2 for me, and it so the album really started out as an album called Cigarettes and Valentines, but the master recordings were stolen from the studio, so the band decided to scrap the whole idea and just completely redo and focus on an entire new album. They did eventually end up finding those tapes, and I didn't know this till not too long ago. They did find those tapes and re-recorded and reworked the songs for Cigarettes and Valentines and released those as B-sides to the tracks on American Idiot.
Which I've only heard a few of those. I haven't heard all of them.
Yeah. So, I think Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Holiday, of course, American Idiot, Wake Me Up When September Ends.
Jesus of Suburbia is my favorite.
Yeah, Homecoming. Those are all great songs off the album.
Well, Jesus of Suburbia, and then probably She's a Rebel. I really love that.
That's a good song too. There's not a bad song on the album.
No, it's fantastic from start to finish. Because like I said, it hits everything.
Yeah.
It is everything an album should be.
Yeah.
So,
but that was my number 2 also. So.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and do your number 1?
My number 1, drum roll. It's not that fantastic, at least to most people. It's Secret Language of Birds by Ian Anderson.
Wah, wah, wah.
Fuck you, because you know what?
I just gotta give you shit, yeah. That's all it is.
Okay.
Don't get all pissy now.
I'm gonna cry. Damn it! I'm gonna cry. No,
it's a good album. It's a good album.
It's, in my opinion, it's Ian Anderson's last great album.
Yeah.
He's done some good albums since then, but it's his last great album. It's mostly acoustic. It's another album where it kind of is everything it needs to be for an Ian Anderson album, or even a Jethro Tull album, because I'm sure all those songs are written to be whatever he decided he wanted them to be once they were recorded. They could have just as easily have been. It could have just easily been a Jethro Tull album, but because it was more acoustic, I think that's why it ended up being a solo album.
Yeah.
But it is everything that an Ian Anderson album / Jethro Tull album should be. I would rank it up with the greats of the 70s. At least on the same level as Songs from the Wood, Heavy Horses, that kind of thing.
The later 70s.
The later 70s, absolutely. And I would put it above Aqualung any day of the week.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's my number 1. It's the first album he did for the 2000s. It came out in March of 2000. It came out on my birthday in March of 2000.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's
March 7th.
Huh.
In 2000. Which was, had nothing to do with anything.
He decided that was all done intentionally.
It was.
There's this guy named Ian Trumbo.
Yeah, he knew I'd be apologizing for him forever. So I'd be his apologist. So no matter what he did. But anyway, yeah, it's if you don't mind a little, softer acoustic kind of stuff, and you're familiar, even remotely familiar with Jethro Tull's music, you should check out Secret Language of Birds, because it's really just surprisingly good for a latter day album. So, yep, that's my number one.
So my number one is it's Blink-182's self-titled album.
Sorry, I just had to give you shit.
No, because you called for the drum roll, man. So
Just because it was number one. It didn't mean it wasn't the drum roll. It was for what was number one. Just the fact that it was number one.
So it's Blink-182's self-titled album. It was released in November 2003. It's the band's fifth studio album. It's definitely a more mature sound overall from what they had done, at least their with Dude Rants or Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. It was, like I said, definitely a more mature album. It's not a bad song on it, and it's when you're recording songs with Robert Smith of The Cure, you're definitely creating a different kind of album if you're Blink-182. And it's,
if you're anybody, really.
Yeah. And it's just it's one of my favorite albums of all time, really. It's just I Miss You, Always, I'm Lost Without You, All of This, which is the song with Robert Smith. And those are all just great, kind of like iconic Blink-182 songs off that album. But it's a fantastic album for sure.
Rock on.
But as you can see, now that we're like done with our top 10 lists, you can see why Ian and I would have a hard time putting a combined list together.
We had one agreement. I mean, we agreed on other albums being good.
Yes.
But where they would fit into a top 10 list, there's just no way.
There's no way we'd be able to do it. So.
No. I mean, I would say half of everything we each mentioned, the other hasn't really truly listened to.
Yeah.
Even if we've listened to it once or twice, because we're not familiar.
And that's kind of why it kind of originally interested me in doing a list like this, because I know that there'd be a lot of diversity between the two of us. Because like when you're talking about 70s music, we kind of listen to the same roughly kind of stuff from the 70s.
Even the 80s
and 90s.
The
80s and 90s, it was all kind of similar. And it, in the 2000s, we were, coming through our 20s into our 30s.
Our tastes were changing, developing, maturing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I'd say that, the way we did it was probably the best way. And, we mentioned a lot of albums that other people who, maybe listen to the show maybe have never heard before.
Yeah, I would definitely
so it turned the top 10 really into a top 20.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, actually, and then with our honorable mentions, like a top 40.
Top 50.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had 22 on my list.
19.
And there was one I didn't even talk about because I knew you had to get a bunch of shit from you. Because I told you no compilation albums, and I was going to talk about Damnesia from Alkaline Trio.
Did you tell me that? I don't remember that. I remember saying no duplicates, which I didn't, and obviously didn't anyway, but I don't remember the compilation ones because I wouldn't have picked the compilation anyway.
And maybe that's why I didn't tell you, but I was going to have no compilation. That's kind of always our thing for music.
No greatest hits, no
greatest
lives.
Hits,
Live, maybe, like if we're Peter Frampton fans, obviously Frampton Comes Alive is the only good album that he ever did. Yeah. So, but yeah.
And I put good in quotation marks.
Very, very heavy quotation marks.
Because, there's only a couple of decent tracks off that too. But I don't know. I was going to talk about Damnesia, but it's a compilation album. It's not live.
But, it's right.
But it's acoustic and it's a compilation. But that's a fantastic album. But anyway.
I think the way we did it worked out.
And another reason I left that off, it was another link to Blink-182 I knew you'd bitch about. So
I wasn't going to bitch. It just seemed like, wow, that guy from Blink-182, that producer from Blink-182, it's like...
Blink's done a lot of stuff, man. Yeah. They've got their hands in a lot of different pots in the last 20 years.
I guess.
But that's all I got, man. Definitely go back and check out any of the albums we talked about that if you haven't listened to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And I know we talked before... I think we did a whole episode about how rock is dead and all this other stuff. And I would
say this is another reason to think that it's not.
No, it's not. It just kind of slightly more underground maybe than it has been.
Which may or may not be a good thing, honestly. It might be a good thing.
I'm really hoping next year we have a lot of good music.
Next year is going to be a good year for music.
Speaking of Blink, have you heard their new song that came out?
I just saw they released a single.
It's really fucking good.
Is it? I'll give it a listen.
And the funny thing is...
It's called Quarantine?
It's called Quarantine, yeah. And it doesn't have Matt Skiba in it, so there's a lot of people wondering if Matt Skiba is no longer in Blink-182.
Oh. Is it just the two of them?
No, there's a third guy. I don't know who he is, but he was from another band, but he plays guitar on it. But it's interesting because Matt Skiba has not posted about it on social media or anything either.
Oh.
So
interesting.
And they Blink-182 has another credit on another song that recently came out within like the last couple of months from another band.
I remember seeing something on there.
And Matt Skiba doesn't have any kind of credit on there either, and he's not in the promotional footage or picture for the song either. So I don't know what's going on there. But I don't know. But that's all I got.
Something is afoot.
Yeah, something is, but I'm not sure. Or maybe just the quarantine. He's just not.
Yeah, it could be. He's just not willing to, or maybe not capable. Oh, I don't see.
I don't know.
Couldn't be capable. But anyway, yeah, who knows?
But anything else you want to add, man, before we end the show here? Definitely go out and check out the albums, though, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All of them.
All of
even
them.
if they're not in the top 10, if we mention them,
Check
they're
them out.
good albums.
Yeah.
So.
Well, in our opinion.
Yeah, well, right.
Because I'm sure my wife would not agree with anything we just talked about for the last
She
hour,
would agree
hour
with
and
some
20
of
minutes.
it, like some of the MXPX stuff, some of the Green Day stuff. I'm sure she would.
Maybe. American Idiot, yeah, and MXPX, but that's probably about it.
Yeah. Well, she would definitely like the Ian Anderson one.
My wife hates Jethro Tull.
Yes.
With a passion. Like anytime I put a Jethro Tull song on the car, she's like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
So I got to change that.
I wouldn't change it.
I've been listening to a lot of Tull lately, though. I've been listening.
I listen to Tull all the time. So
I listened to Benefit a couple of times the last
I saw
couple
on
of days.
Instagram. I think you had stand up on there too recently, didn't you?
Did I?
I think so.
I don't know. I post a lot of records on Instagram, so
Yeah.
I got over 200 albums on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't
now.
care about social media that much. So.
I just have fun with it.
Yeah,
That's fun.
I post when I
like
think
looking
about it,
and I
if
will tell
don't-
you that there's people I follow on Instagram that I'm like, oh shit, I would love to. I didn't, I'd see an album and be like, oh, I've never seen that variant. I'd love to be able to find that. And
Right.
so it's kind of cool to see other things.
I did see that they had I don't know if it was a live version or if it was just another country's version of Thick as a Brick, a different cover.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it had like promotional. I've seen the picture before, but and it was from some of the promotional stuff. But like I said, I don't know if it was just like alternative pressing from another country or if it was a live album.
Gotcha.
So.
That's all I got, man. Anything else you want to add? You good?
No, I'm good.
Well, any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@ligpodcast.us. Check us out on Twitter @ligpod. We're on Facebook, Podbeam, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Even though Google's changing, I don't know what they're doing. I just got an email saying that they're changing their service, so I don't know if Google Podcasts is going away and it's going to go to something else, or I'm not sure what's going on with that. But definitely check us out on Spotify, iHeartRadio, just about everywhere else. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes.
Yes, or 6.
There's only 5 stars on there. Ian.
I don't give a shit.
Just do whatever.
You know what? I'm an American.
You know,
it's unconstitutional to tell me I only can leave 5 stars.
I don't like masks, and I don't like being told how many stars I can leave.
I want to do 6 stars.
Yeah.
No masks and 6 stars.
Burn in hell. All right, man.
For the record, I mask, wear them.
Everyone be safe out there.
Yes.
Well, all right, until next time,
Talk to y'all later.
peace.
Play my role, let me tell you about it. This shit right here, man, I'm about it. Only real niggas reside around me. Yo, old lady, drop a guard around me. Dip like I know you can, bitch. Show me the ropes like we in the ring. Got you took over, you wanna hang. Shoulder to shoulder, the niggas basic. You know I won't lie. You know that I ain't for that fuck shit. You niggas alright, but I'm way better and she love it. Know that y'all sick as fuck. Here go this tissue, bro. We drinking the dub, hoping you get you some. This hit like a pick me up. She taking my drugs. Know they see the sign. That's some dollar signs. Know they sick as fuck. Know they sick as fuck. Tell them get well soon. Tell them get well soon. Know you sick as fuck. Get well soon.
Oh shit. Watch out, you the god, Billy. Oh shit. Right now, and I'm smiling in your face, bitch. With a gold smile, you should probably make placement to your